Picture this, Christmas Eve, 8 months pregnant, standing in 6 inches of snow outside your own mansion. Through the window, you can see your husband. He sees you too, and he smiles. Then he closes the curtains and goes back to dancing with his mistress, the woman wearing your robe, the woman wearing your life. But here is what he did not know. The woman he locked out in the cold was not just his pregnant wife. She was a Harvard-trained lawyer, and she was about to bring down his entire empire. This story has 3 twists you will never see coming. Stay until the end, because the final 60 seconds will leave you speechless. Drop a comment telling me what you would do, and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss what happens next. This is Claire's story. They say home is where the heart is. Mine was on the other side of a locked door, watching my husband pour champagne for the woman wearing my robe. Christmas Eve, 8 months pregnant, standing in 6 inches of fresh snow outside the 12,000 square foot mansion I had designed from the ground up. The mansion I had poured 3 years of my life into. The mansion that was supposed to be our forever home. I punched in the security code, the same 6 digits I had used every single day for 2 years. The panel flashed red, access denied. I tried again, slower this time, making sure I hit each number correctly. Red light, access denied, through the beveled glass of the front door. I could see the Christmas party in full swing. 50 people, maybe more. The tree I had decorated last week sparkled in the corner. The catering staff I had hired moved through the crowd with silver trays. The champagne I had ordered by the case flowed freely. And there was Marcus, my husband, the father of my unborn child, dancing in the center of the living room with his arms wrapped around Brooke Callahan. She was wearing my robe, the white silk one Marcus had bought me for our anniversary, the one I had left hanging in the master bathroom this morning. I knocked on the door, soft at first, then harder. The glass was thick. The music was loud. Nobody turned around. I pounded with my fist. My knuckles ached from the cold. Still nothing. Then Marcus looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. For 1 second, one single heartbeat. I thought he would come to the door, explain the mistake, tell me the locks had malfunctioned. Instead, he smiled. That smile I had fallen in love with 8 years ago. That smile that had convinced me to give up my law career. That smile that had promised me forever. He smiled at me standing in the snow, 8 months pregnant, locked out of my own home. Then he pulled Brooke closer and closed the curtains. The baby kicked. Hard. Like she knew something was wrong before I did. I pulled out my phone, called Marcus, straight to voicemail, called again. Same result. Texted him. The message showed as delivered but not read. My fingers were going numb. I had left my coat inside when I ran out to grab the last-minute gift from my car. That was 20 minutes ago, maybe 30. Time had stopped making sense. The side door. Maybe I could get in through the side door. I trudged through the snow, my swollen feet already soaked through my flats. The motion sensor lights clicked on, illuminating my path like a spotlight on my humiliation. The side door code was the same as the front. Red light, access denied. The garage. I still had my garage remote in the car. I made my way back around the house, past the windows where I could see guests laughing and drinking and having the Christmas Eve party I had spent 2 weeks planning. Nobody saw me. Nobody looked. My car was still in the driveway where I had left it. I grabbed the garage remote, pointed it at the door, pressed the button. Nothing happened. I pressed it again, and again. The battery was fine. I had used it this morning. The door simply would not respond. That was when I understood. The codes had not malfunctioned. The locks had not broken. Marcus had changed everything, every code, every remote, every way back in. He had planned this. The front door opened. Not all the way, just enough for Brooke to slip through. She was wearing Marcus's cashmere jacket now, the one I had bought him for his birthday, the one that still smelled like his cologne. She walked toward me through the snow in her designer heels, her perfect blonde hair catching the Christmas lights, her face arranged in an expression of practiced sympathy. "I have a message from Marcus," she said. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. Like she had practiced this moment in front of a mirror. I could not speak, could not move, Could only stand there with one hand on my pregnant belly and the other clutching a phone that had become useless. Brooks stopped 3 feet away, close enough to deliver the blow, far enough to stay out of reach. He said to tell you the locks are not the only thing he has changed. Check your bank accounts. The marriage is over. Your things will be delivered to your mother's address tomorrow. His lawyers will be in touch after the holiday. I found my voice somewhere in the wreckage of my chest. I am 8 months pregnant. It is Christmas Eve. Brooks' expression did not change. I know. That is why he waited until now. Courts are closed until January 2nd. By the time you can file anything, everything will already be settled. She turned to go back inside, then stopped, looked over her shoulder. Oh, and he said to remind you about the documents you signed in September, the custody agreement. He will be seeking full custody based on your mental health history. I never signed any custody agreement. Brooke smiled, the same smile Marcus had given me through the glass. You did. I notarized it myself. She disappeared back inside. The door closed. The lock clicked. The music swelled. I stood in the snow, watching the party continue without me, and felt my entire life collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. Then I did something I had not done in 2 years. I called my mother. My mother, Diana, answered on the first ring, like she had been waiting for this call, like she had known it was coming. Mom, I said. My voice cracked on that single syllable. Where are you? Not a question. A demand. The voice of a woman who had spent 30 years as a federal judge. The voice I had grown up both fearing and admiring. Outside the house, he locked me out. I am 8 months pregnant, and he locked me out in the snow, and I do not know what to do. Silence on the line. Then the sound of keys jingling, car door opening. I am 45 minutes away, Diana said. Find somewhere warm. A neighbor. A coffee shop. Anywhere. I will be there, Mom. The tears came now, hot against my frozen cheeks. I am so sorry. You were right about him. You were right about everything. More silence. When Diana spoke again, her voice was softer, not gentle. My mother did not do gentle, but softer. We will discuss right and wrong later. Right now we focus on keeping you and that baby alive. Do you understand me? Yes. Good. Find shelter. Keep your phone on. I am coming. She hung up. No goodbye, no reassurances, just action. That was Diana. I looked around at the dark street, the snow falling heavier now, the houses with their warm lights and closed doors. The nearest coffee shop was 2 miles away. I was not sure I could walk that far. My car. I could sit in my car with the heat running. I got in, started the engine, cranked the heat to maximum. The dashboard clock read 9:47. Less than an hour until Christmas. While I waited for the car to warm up, I pulled out my phone, checked my bank accounts. The joint checking account showed a balance of 0. The joint savings, the same. The investment accounts, closed entirely. I switched to my personal checking account, the one I had opened before we got married, the one I used for small purchases and coffee and things that did not need to go through our shared finances. Balance $47.16. Marcus had not touched this account. Could not touch it. My name only. But $47 was not going to get me very far with a baby due in 6 weeks. I kept checking. Credit cards. All declined. Phone bill. Past due. Car insurance. Canceled. Marcus had not just locked me out of the house. He had locked me out of my entire life. The phone rang in my hand. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Claire Weston. A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. This is Anna Campbell from Weston Technologies. I am calling to inform you that your access badge has been deactivated and you are no longer permitted on company premises. I do not work for the company. I said, I am his wife. We're his wife. As of 6 p.m. today, all spousal privileges have been revoked. Any attempt to enter the building will result in a trespassing charge. Have a nice holiday. Click. I stared at the phone. 6 p.m. He had started the process at 6 p.m. I had been in the kitchen at 6 p.m., putting the finishing touches on the appetizers for the party. He had kissed my cheek, asked if I needed help, told me everything looked perfect. At 6 p.m., while kissing my cheek, Marcus had been erasing me from existence. My phone buzzed, a news alert from a local gossip site. I almost dismissed it. Then I saw the headline: Tech CEO Marcus Weston announces engagement to CFO Brooke Callahan at Christmas Eve celebration. I opened the article. There was a photo. Marcus and Brooke in front of the Christmas tree. Our Christmas tree in our living room. She was showing off an engagement ring, a massive diamond, bigger than the one he had given me. The article continued. Sources close to the couple say Weston and his previous wife Claire separated months ago due to her ongoing mental health struggles. The pregnancy was reportedly the catalyst for their split, with insiders suggesting Claire became increasingly unstable as her due date approached. Lies. All of it lies. We had not separated. I was not unstable. This morning we had eaten breakfast together, discussed baby names, made plans for New Year's Eve. This morning my life had been normal. Headlights in the rearview mirror, a silver sedan pulling into the driveway behind me. Diana. She was out of the car before the engine stopped, moving with the determined stride of a woman who had spent her career demanding justice. She yanked open my passenger door and got in, bringing a blast of cold air and the familiar scent of her perfume. She looked at me. Really looked. Taking in the wet clothes, the running mascara, the vacant expression of someone in shock. Tell me everything, Diana said. Start from the beginning. Do not leave anything out. So I told her. The locked door, Brooke's message, the bank accounts, the news article, the custody agreement I had never signed. Diana listened without interrupting. Her face grew harder with each detail. By the time I finished, she looked like she was ready to commit a felony. The documents from September. Diana said, What do you remember signing in September? I thought back. September. I had been so sick. The first trimester nausea had lasted well into the second. Some days I could barely lift my head off the pillow. Marcus brought home papers one night, said they were for refinancing the mortgage. Investment documents, insurance forms for the baby. I was exhausted. I signed where he pointed. Diana closed her eyes, let out a long breath. He got you to sign a custody agreement while you were too sick to read it, she said, and his mistress notarized it. That is fraud. That is coercion. That is about 6 different criminal offenses. But how do I prove it? How do I prove I did not know what I was signing? Diana opened her eyes. The look in them was something I had not seen since I was a teenager. The look of a mother preparing to go to war for her child. We prove it by being smarter than him. Diana said, You are a Harvard-trained lawyer. Claire, you may have forgotten that while you were playing housewife, but I have not. You know how to build a case. You know how to find evidence. You know how to fight. I gave up my career for him. Then take it back. Diana reached over and gripped my hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was strong. You are not a victim, Claire. You are a woman who has been wronged by a man who thinks he is untouchable, and you are going to prove him wrong. The baby kicked again, harder this time, like she was agreeing with her grandmother. Where do we start? I asked. Diana smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile she used to give defendants right before she handed down a maximum sentence. We start by finding you a lawyer who hates rich men as much as I do. Grant Holloway's office was nothing like the sleek downtown firms Marcus used. It was a converted Victorian house near the county courthouse, with creaky floors and walls covered in children's artwork. A fat tabby cat slept on the reception desk. Grant himself answered the door at 7:30 on Christmas morning, rumpled sweater, coffee in hand, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He looked like someone's favorite uncle, not a shark lawyer. Diana, he said, stepping aside to let us in. When you said emergency, I assumed you meant mildly urgent. Not Christmas morning. Urgent. This could not wait. Diana replied, My daughter needs help. And you owe me. Grant's eyes moved to me, took in the borrowed clothes Diana had brought, the dark circles under my eyes, the obvious pregnancy. Claire Weston, he said, I have been following your husband's company. The IPO is supposed to happen in February. $400 million valuation. $400 million that is built on fraud. Diana said, among other things. Grant raised his eyebrows, motioned us toward his office. The cat followed, whining between my ankles as I walked. We settled into worn leather chairs across from Grant's cluttered desk. He pulled out a legal pad, clicked a pen, and looked at me with an expression that was somehow both skeptical and kind. "Tell me everything," he said, "and I do mean everything. The parts that make you look bad too. I cannot help you if you hide things." So I told the story again. Longer this time. More detailed. Grant asked questions that made me think about things I had not considered. Had Marcus isolated me from friends? Yes. He did not like me seeing people from my former life. Had he controlled the finances? Yes, I had an allowance. $500 a month for a household that spent $10,000 on catering alone. Had he made me dependent? Yes. He convinced me to quit my career, said I did not need to work, said my job was to make a home. By the time I finished, Grant's legal pad was full of notes and his expression had changed from skeptical to something darker. "This is not just a divorce," Grant said. "This is a systematic dismantling of another person. He isolated you, made you financially dependent, eliminated your career, and now he is trying to take your child before she is even born." The words hit hard. I had never thought of it as abuse. Marcus never hit me, never yelled, never threatened. But he had controlled every aspect of my life until I could not function without him. "Why now?" Grant continued. "Why go nuclear like this when the IPO is 6 weeks away?" "Because the baby changes things," Diana said. "A messy divorce during an IPO would hurt valuation. Investors get nervous. Questions get asked. Stock price drops." Grant nodded slowly. "So he needs this settled fast. Needs Claire discredited and out of the picture before February. That is why the mental health narrative. That is why the custody grab. If he can convince a judge she is unstable, he gets the baby, the money, and the company. She gets nothing. The custody agreement I supposedly signed." I said, "What does it say exactly, D?" Grant pulled up something on his computer. His face grew darker as he read. "If this document is enforced as written, you get supervised visitation only. Full custody goes to Marcus. You receive a one-time payment of $50,000 and no claim to any marital assets. $50,000. For 8 years of marriage. For giving up my career. For building his company from our kitchen table? That is not just unfair," Diana said. "That is criminal." Grant leaned back in his chair. "Here is the problem. Proving fraud takes time, and Marcus has time. He has money. He has lawyers who will drag this out until after the IPO, until his assets are protected, until Claire is so exhausted and broke, she takes whatever he offers just to make it stop. Then we find evidence that speeds things up." I said, something that forces his hand. Grant and Diana both looked at me. "I am not going to sit here and wait for someone else to save me. I know that company. I helped build it. I wrote the original contracts. I know where the bodies are buried." Grant smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had seen from him. "Good," he said, "because passive clients lose cases. Active clients win them. What do you know that Marcus does not know? You know." I thought about it. All those nights Marcus came home late, briefcase full of documents, stress radiating off him like heat. I had assumed it was normal business pressure. Now I wondered. "There is a storage unit," I said slowly, remembering. "Marcus rented it about a year ago. Said it was for old company records. He keeps the key in his home office." Or he did. "What kind of records?" "I do not know, but he was very particular about that storage unit. Never let anyone else have access. Got angry when I asked about it once." Grant and Diana exchanged glances. "We need those records." Grant said, "I have a key. I realized. Or I might. Marcus gave me a spare when he first rented it. Told me it was in case something happened to him. I put it in my jewelry box and forgot about it." Diana was already standing. "Your jewelry box that is currently inside the mansion. That he locked me out of." I finished. "But my things are supposed to be delivered today." He said tomorrow, which is today. Christmas Day. Grant checked his watch. "If we time this right, we might be able to intercept the delivery. Make sure that key ends up in the right hands before Marcus realizes it is important." For the first time since standing in the snow outside my own home, I felt something other than despair. I felt the beginning of a plan. The moving truck arrived at Diana's house at noon on Christmas Day. 2 men in gray uniforms, looking uncomfortable about working on a holiday, loaded box after box onto the porch. I watched from the window. heart pounding, as they brought in the remnants of my married life. Clothes, books, personal items, everything I had accumulated in 8 years, reduced to cardboard boxes. The jewelry box was in the third box they unloaded, a velvet case that had belonged to my grandmother. I grabbed it before the men even finished stacking, tore it open with shaking hands. The key was there, small, silver, unremarkable, tucked in a corner where I had dropped it over a year ago and forgotten. I held it up to the light, such a tiny thing to carry such enormous potential. Grant had already obtained the storage unit address from public records. Sterling Storage, Unit 317, on the outskirts of town. We could not legally enter without risking suppression of whatever we found, but there were ways around that. I need to see what is in there. I told Diana, I need to know what he is hiding. Diana's jaw tightened. If you enter that unit, anything you find could be challenged in court. Chain of custody issues, Fourth Amendment problems. I am still technically his wife. I said, I have a key he gave me. That unit could contain marital assets. I have a right to inventory. Diana considered this. Then she picked up her phone and called Grant. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. When she hung up, her expression was conflicted. Grant says it is a gray area. You have a colorable claim to access. If Marcus challenges it, we argue marital property rights. It is not clean, but it might hold up. Then let us go. Diana drove. The storage facility was 15 minutes outside of town, a sprawling complex of orange doors and security cameras. We pulled up to the gate, entered the code on the key tag, and waited while the barrier lifted. Unit 317 was in the back corner, away from the main office, away from the security booth, deliberately isolated. I got out of the car. The snow had stopped, but the cold was bitter. My breath made clouds in the air as I walked to the orange door, inserted the key, turned. The lock clicked open. Inside, the unit was larger than I expected, 10 by 20 feet, filled with file boxes stacked floor to ceiling, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. What the hell? Diana breathed behind me. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, stepped inside. The boxes were labeled with dates going back 5 years, before the IPO announcement, before our marriage, before I even met Marcus. I opened the nearest box. Inside were financial documents, spreadsheets, bank statements, account numbers I did not recognize. Claire, Diana's voice was sharp. Look at this. She was holding a folder she had pulled from another box. I moved closer, shone my light on the pages. They were 2 sets of books, one labeled external, one labeled internal. The numbers were completely different. This is fraud, I said. This is actual textbook fraud. He has been falsifying financial reports for years. Diana kept flipping through pages. It gets worse. Look at these account numbers. These are offshore, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Luxembourg. He has been moving money out of the company into hidden accounts. How much? Diana did a quick calculation. From what I can see here, at least 50 million, maybe more, $50 million, hidden. While he gave me a $500 monthly allowance and told me we needed to be careful with money, this is why he needed me gone. I realized the IPO is in 6 weeks. If anyone looked too closely at the finances, they would find this. And I am a lawyer. I know how to read financial documents. I was the one person who might accidentally stumble onto the truth. So he planned your exit. Diana said, made sure you would be too discredited to be believed, too broke to fight, too broken to look. But someone else knows. I pulled out another folder. Whoever prepared these documents, whoever moved the money, he could not have done this alone. Diana found the answer in the next box. Correspondence, emails printed and filed, between Marcus and Brooke Callahan. They went back 18 months, before I even got pregnant, before I even knew Brooke existed. The emails were careful, coded language, but certain phrases jumped out. The wife wants a baby. This complicates things, but might work in our favor. And later, playing devoted husband for another year. Then we file. Claims she is unstable postpartum. And finally, by the time this is over, I will be worth $500 million and she will have nothing. I read those words 3 times. Each time they cut deeper. He had planned this from the moment I said I wanted to start a family. He had used my desire for a child as a weapon against me. He had pretended to be happy about the pregnancy while secretly plotting to take the baby and leave me destroyed. Diana was photographing everything, methodically documenting each page, each folder, each piece of evidence. "We need to get this to Grant," she said, "and then we need to decide what to do with it." "What do you mean, decide?" "We use it. We destroy him." Diana stopped photographing, looked at me with an expression I could not read. "If we expose this fraud, the company collapses. The IPO fails. Investors sue. Marcus goes to prison. Probably, but there will be nothing left to divide. No assets, no settlement. You would get custody of your daughter, but you would be raising her on nothing. So my choice is money or justice. Your choice is security or truth, and only you can make it." I looked around at the boxes. Years of deception, years of careful, calculated cruelty, all of it documented, all of it damning. And Marcus thought he had won, thought I was too broken to fight, too stupid to find this, too weak to use it. He was wrong. The next 3 days were a blur of legal filings and strategy sessions. Grant worked around the clock, pulling together emergency motions based on the evidence from the storage unit. Diana called in every favor she had accumulated in 3 decades on the bench. I organized everything I had photographed, creating a timeline of Marcus's deception that stretched back nearly 2 years. On December 28th, we got our first win. Judge Patricia Winters granted an emergency restraining order, preventing Marcus from disposing of any marital assets. The storage unit was sealed. The offshore accounts were frozen pending investigation. Marcus's lawyer screamed objections, argued that the evidence was obtained illegally, claimed I had broken into the storage unit. Judge Winters was unmoved. Mrs. Weston had a key provided by her husband. The judge said she had reasonable belief the unit contained marital property. Motion denied. I walked out of that courthouse feeling something I had not felt in weeks. Hope. Grant intercepted me on the steps. "We need to talk strategy." He said, "Marcus is going to hit back. Hard. This restraining order embarrassed him. His IPO is in jeopardy. He is going to escalate. Let him escalate. I have evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. What can he possibly do?" Grant's expression was grim. "He can come after your credibility, your mental health, your fitness as a mother. He has money for private investigators, expert witnesses, anyone who will say whatever he needs them to say. I am not afraid of him anymore." "Maybe you should be," Grant said, "because men like Marcus do not lose gracefully. They burn everything down before they let someone else win." I did not listen. I should have. The next morning, I woke to pounding on Diana's front door. 6:30 in the morning. Still dark outside. Diana answered in her robe, and I heard voices in the hallway. Sharp, official. Then Diana appeared in my doorway. Her face was white. "They have a warrant," she said, "for your arrest." I sat up, heart suddenly racing. "Arrest? For what?" "Theft. They are claiming you stole proprietary documents from Weston Technologies. The storage unit. Marcus is saying everything in there was company property, not marital assets, and that you broke in to steal trade secrets. That is insane, Hasai. He gave me that key. Can you prove it?" I opened my mouth, closed it. He had given me the key in our kitchen. No witnesses, no documentation, just his word against mine. 2 officers appeared behind Diana, a man and a woman, both with apologetic expressions. "Claire Weston," the woman said, "Officer Davis, you need to come with us. She is 8 months pregnant." Diana said, her voice was ice. "If anything happens to her or that baby in your custody, I will personally ensure you never work in law enforcement again." Officer Davis looked uncomfortable. "We will make sure she is processed quickly, and we have already arranged for medical personnel to be present. They let me change clothes, let Diana follow in her car, but they put me in handcuffs, in front of the neighbors who had gathered to watch, in front of the news van that had somehow already appeared. Marcus had tipped off the press, made sure everyone saw me being arrested on the morning news. Pregnant, handcuffed, humiliated. At the station, I was processed quickly as promised. Fingerprinted, photographed, put in a holding cell that smelled like despair. Grant arrived within the hour. Got me released on my own recognizance pending arraignment. The charges were flimsy, he said, would not survive scrutiny. This was harassment, not prosecution. But the damage was done. By noon, my arrest was everywhere. Social media, news sites, cable networks, pregnant wife of tech CEO, arrested for theft. The comments were brutal. She looks crazy. Gold digger got caught. He should get full custody. Marcus gave an interview that afternoon, looking composed, sympathetic, heartbroken. My wife has been struggling for months. He said, the pregnancy made her mental health issues worse. I tried to get her help, but she refused. I had no choice but to protect my company from her erratic behavior. All I want now is to ensure the safety of my unborn child. I watched from Diana's living room, fists clenched, fury burning in my chest. He is good, Grant said quietly. I will give him that. He is very good. He is a monster. He is a monster with excellent PR coaching. And right now, he is winning the narrative war. Then we need to fight back. We need to tell my side. Grant shook his head. Not yet. Going public now plays into his hands. We need leverage first. Something he cannot spin. Something that forces him to back down. Like what? Like a witness. Someone inside his operation who knows the truth and is willing to tell it. I thought about it. Marcus's inner circle was small, loyal. Everyone who worked closely with him either benefited from his schemes or was too afraid to speak up. Except maybe one person, Nathan Cross. I said, Marcus's partner. They started the company together 15 years ago, but something changed about a year ago. They stopped being friends, started being just business partners. Marcus said Nathan was getting cold feet about the IPO. You think he knows about the fraud? I think he suspects, and I think it is eating him alive. Grant considered this. Can you reach him? I used to have his number. We were friends once before Marcus decided I should not have friends. Then try, because right now, Nathan Cross might be the only person who can save you. Nathan agreed to meet me at a diner 20 miles outside of town, neutral territory, away from security cameras and prying eyes, a place where nobody would recognize either of us. I arrived 15 minutes early, chose a booth into the back corner, ordered coffee I would not drink, watched the door with the nervous energy of someone waiting for a lifeline. When Nathan walked in, I barely recognized him. The last time I had seen him was at a company party 6 months ago. He had been confident then, polished, the picture of success. Now he looked terrible, gaunt, haunted, like a man who had not slept in months. His suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes had dark circles underneath. His hands shook slightly as he slid into the booth across from me. I should not be here, he said, before I even had a chance to speak. If Marcus finds out I am talking to you, he will destroy me too. He has eyes everywhere. People who report back to him. I took 3 different routes to get here just to make sure I was not followed. Then why did you come? Nathan was silent for a long moment, stirring coffee he was not drinking. The spoon made soft clinking sounds against the ceramic mug. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the highway. Inside, the diner was nearly empty. Just us and an elderly couple in the front corner and a waitress who looked bored. Because I have known Marcus for 15 years. Nathan finally said, his voice was barely above a whisper. I watched him build this company from nothing. We started in his garage. 2 computers and a dream. I believed in him. I believed in us. I believed we were going to change the world. He paused, took a breath that seemed to cost him something, and then I watched him become something I do not recognize, something I do not want to be associated with, something that keeps me awake at night wondering how I missed the signs. The fraud. I said quietly, you know about it. Nathan flinched like I had slapped him. The word hung in the air between us. Heavy, dangerous, impossible to take back. I suspected. He admitted. For a long time, I did not want to believe it. Marcus was my friend, my partner, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world. But the numbers never added up. Too much money going into accounts I could not access. Too many transactions that did not make sense. Too many meetings I was not invited to. He looked at me, really looked, the same way Grant had looked at me that first morning in his cluttered office. searching for something, trying to decide if I could be trusted. I told myself there had to be an explanation, that Marcus would never betray everything we built together, that I was being paranoid. But deep down I knew. I think I always knew. When did you start to figure it out? I reached into my bag, pulled out copies of some of what I had found in the storage unit. Not everything, but enough. Enough to show him I was serious. Enough to prove I already knew. Nathan took the papers. His hands trembled as he read. His face went pale, then green. For a moment I thought he might actually be sick right there in the booth. "This is worse than I thought," he said. His voice cracked. I knew he was hiding things. But this is not just fraud. This is systematic embezzlement. This is criminal conspiracy. This is 20 years in federal prison, which is why he needed me gone. I said, the words came out steady even though my heart was pounding. "I am a lawyer. I know how to read financial documents." I might have found out. So he planned my removal like a hostile takeover. Discredit me, bankrupt me, take my child as leverage, make sure I was too destroyed to ever be believed about anything. Nathan put the papers down, pressed his palms against his eyes. When he looked up again, there were tears on his cheeks. "I should have warned you. Months ago, a year ago. I saw the signs. The way he talked about you changed. You went from being his partner to being an obstacle, from being his wife to being a problem that needed to be solved. But I told myself it was stress, IPO pressure. I told myself Marcus would never actually hurt you. Not like this. But he did hurt me. He is still hurting me. And the only way I can stop him is if someone with inside knowledge tells the truth. Someone who can verify what these documents mean. Someone a jury will believe." Nathan looked at me for a long moment. The diner noise washed over us, plates clattering in the kitchen, coffee pouring behind the counter, the elderly couple laughing at something, normal life continuing while mine hung in the balance. "You want me to testify," Nathan said slowly, "publicly, on the record, against the man who could destroy my career with a single phone call. I want you to do what is right. I want you to be the person you used to be, before Marcus corrupted everything." He was quiet again, thinking, wrestling with something I could not see. I watched his face and tried to read what was happening behind his eyes. "If I testify," Nathan said finally, "I lose everything. My shares in the company, my reputation, my career. Marcus has enough dirt on me to make sure I never work in tech again. He has made that very clear over the years. Stay loyal or suffer the consequences. If you do not testify," I said, "he wins. He gets away with fraud, with embezzlement, with destroying me and anyone else who gets in his way. He raises my daughter telling her that her mother was crazy. He becomes a billionaire on stolen money. Is that the world you want to live in?" Nathan closed his eyes. I could see the battle happening inside him. Fear versus conscience. Self-preservation versus justice. The man Marcus had made him versus the man he used to be. "No," he whispered. "That is not the world I want." "Then help me, please. Be the partner you were before all of this. Be the friend I remember from those early days." Another long silence. Then Nathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. Small, black, unremarkable. But the way he held it told me it was anything but ordinary. "I have been keeping records," he said, "for 2 years. Everything I suspected but could not prove. Bank transfers, meeting notes, emails Marcus thought he deleted, conversations I recorded without him knowing. It is all there. Every piece of evidence you need." I took the flash drive. It felt impossibly light for something so heavy with consequence and awe. "Why did you keep this? Insurance. In case Marcus ever turned on me. In case I needed protection. I never thought I would actually use it against him. I never thought I would have the courage. Will you testify? Publicly. On the record. In front of cameras and lawyers and everyone." Nathan took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Something shifted in his expression. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Something that looked almost like relief. "Yes," he said, "I will testify. Because I cannot live with myself if I do not. Because some things matter more than money. Because maybe this is my chance to become the person I should have been all along." I wanted to hug him, thank him, Tell him he was saving my life and my daughter's future. But before I could say anything, Nathan's phone buzzed. He looked at it. All the color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. His hands began to shake again. What is it? It is Marcus. He knows I am here. Someone must have seen me. He is threatening to tell the SEC I was part of the fraud if I do not come back immediately. Says he has evidence that I signed off on the false reports. Were you, part of the fraud? Nathan hesitated. Too long. The silence told me everything. I signed some documents I should have read more carefully. Nothing major, but enough. Enough that Marcus could make my life very difficult. Enough that he has leverage. So he has leverage on you, like he has leverage on everyone. He has leverage on everyone. Nathan confirmed that is how he operates. Find the weakness. Exploit it. Make sure nobody can betray him without destroying themselves in the process. It is how he has stayed untouchable for so long. But you are still going to testify. Oh, Nathan stood up. Put money on the table for the coat that neither of us had touched. His movements were deliberate, decided. I am going to do something first, he said. Something that needs to be done. Something I should have done a long time ago. Then yes, I will testify. I will tell the truth. Whatever it costs me. What are you going to do? Nathan did not answer. Just looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Sadness, maybe? Or resignation? Or something else entirely. Thank you, he said, for giving me the courage to finally do the right thing. Then he walked out of the diner into the cold gray morning. I watched him through the window, watched him get into his car, watched him drive away. I should have followed him, should have asked more questions, should have known that something was wrong. Instead, I went home and told Grant and Diana about the flash drive. We spent hours going through the files, building our case, preparing for the victory we thought was finally within reach. We did not know that victory was about to be ripped away. We did not know that I would never see Nathan alive again. The call came at 3 in the morning, January 2nd, the first business day after New Year. I answered groggy, still half asleep. A voice I did not recognize spoke words that did not make sense. Nathan Cross, dead, apparent suicide, found in his car outside his office, a note on the passenger seat. I cannot live with what Claire made me do. I sat up in bed, suddenly, horribly awake. What? The detective's voice was flat, professional. I need you to come to the station. Mrs. Weston, we have some questions. I did not make him do anything. I just talked to him. That is what we need to discuss. Please do not leave town. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of Diana's guest room, one hand pressed against my belly where the baby was kicking, trying to process what I had just heard. Nathan was dead, and somehow, impossibly, I was being blamed. Diana appeared in the doorway. She had heard everything through the thin walls. Her face was grim. Get dressed, she said. I am calling Grant. At the police station, Detective Morrison was waiting, a thick man with suspicious eyes and a folder full of questions. Mrs. Weston, you met with Nathan Cross on December 30th. What did you discuss? I want my lawyer present. Your lawyer is on his way. But this is just a conversation. We are not accusing you of anything. Yet, the word hung in the air like a threat. Grant arrived 20 minutes later. The questions continued for 3 hours. Every detail of my meeting with Nathan, every word we exchanged, every reason I might have had for wanting him dead. I did not want him dead. He was going to help me. He was going to testify against Marcus. Detective Morrison raised his eyebrows. Testify about what? I looked at Grant. He nodded. Financial fraud? I said, embezzlement. Marcus has been cooking the books for years. Nathan knew about it. He gave me evidence. The detective made a note. And where is this evidence now? Grant pulled out the flash drive, handed it over. Detective Morrison examined it, turned it over in his hands. Then he set it down and pushed it back across the table. This flash drive is empty, he said. There are no files on it. I felt the blood drain from my face. That is not possible. I saw the files myself, then someone deleted them. Recently, within the last 24 hours, Marcus must have somehow gotten access, found a way to wipe the drive. That is a serious accusation, Detective Morrison said. Do you have any evidence, Mr. Weston tampered with this drive? I had nothing except my word against Marcus's, and Marcus had just been handed the perfect excuse to destroy me completely. The note found in Nathan's car, Detective Morrison continued. He claims you pressured him into betraying Mr. Weston, that you threatened to expose his involvement in the fraud if he did not cooperate. That is a lie. Nathan came to me willingly. He wanted to help. That is not what the note says, and the note is in his handwriting. Our experts confirmed it. The room started spinning. This was not possible. Nathan had been fine when I left him. Scared, yes, but determined. Ready to do the right thing. Someone forced him to write that note. I said, someone killed him and made it look like suicide. Detective Morrison's expression did not change. That is quite an accusation. Do you have any evidence? I did not have evidence. I did not have anything except a dead witness, an empty flash drive, and a note that blamed me for all of it. We are not filing charges at this time, Detective Morrison said finally, but you remain a person of interest. Do not leave the county. I walked out of that police station into the gray January morning and felt the last of my hope crumbling to dust. Grant caught up with me on the steps. We need to regroup, figure out our next move. Our next move. Nathan is dead. The evidence is gone. And everyone thinks I drove him to suicide. What possible move do we have left? Grant did not have an answer. That night, I started having contractions. Not Braxton Hicks, real ones, sharp and regular and too early. Diana drove me to the hospital. The doctors examined me, said I was in early labor, 6 weeks before my due date. They gave me medication to stop the contractions, hooked me up to monitors, made me lie flat on my back and try to stay calm. But how could I stay calm? My witness was dead. My evidence was gone. My husband was on television every hour, playing the grieving friend of a man I had supposedly destroyed. And my baby was trying to come early because even she knew that something had gone terribly wrong. I spent 3 days in the hospital. The medication worked. The contractions stopped. The baby stayed where she was supposed to be. But the world outside kept moving in terrible directions. Marcus's PR team worked overtime. Every news outlet ran the same story. Nathan Cross, beloved business partner, driven to suicide by the unstable estranged wife of his best friend. The sympathy for Marcus was overwhelming. The condemnation of me was absolute. On January 5th, I was discharged from the hospital. Diana picked me up. We drove in silence through streets that felt hostile now. People staring at every red light, phones out, taking pictures. That is her. The crazy one, the one who killed that man. We were 2 blocks from Diana's house when the police cars appeared. 3 of them, blocking the street. Officers getting out with weapons drawn. Claire Weston, out of the vehicle, hands where we can see them. Diana stopped the car. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. This is wrong, she said. This is so wrong, I know. I got out slowly, hands up, heart pounding. Officer Brennan approached, the same apologetic expression from before, but something harder in his eyes now. Claire Weston, you are under arrest for accessory to fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. The handcuffs closed around my wrists. Cold metal against my skin. I did not kill anyone. I said, I did not commit fraud. Marcus is the one you should be arresting. Officer Brennan just shook his head. Save it for your lawyer. They put me in the back of the police car. Diana stood on the sidewalk, already on her phone with Grant. News vans appeared from nowhere, cameras rolling, capturing every second of my humiliation. Pregnant woman arrested for murder conspiracy. Tech CEO's wife accused of driving partner to suicide. At the station, I was processed again. Fingerprints, photographs, orange jumpsuit that barely fit over my pregnant belly. They put me in a holding cell, alone, the concrete walls pressing in from all sides. I sat on the metal bench and put my hands on my stomach, felt the baby moving, strong kicks, angry kicks. I am sorry, I whispered. I am so sorry. Baby girl, your mama tried. She really tried. The hours passed. No one came. No lawyer, no mother, no rescue. At some point, I must have fallen asleep because I woke to the sound of the cell door opening. A guard stood there with a grim expression. Weston. Medical. What? You are having contractions. The monitors picked it up. You need to go to the hospital. I looked down at myself, felt the tightening in my abdomen that I had not recognized in my exhaustion. The baby was coming. For real this time. 6 weeks early. In jail. Without anyone who loved me nearby. They put me in an ambulance with a guard, handcuffed to the gurney because I was apparently a flight risk even while in active labor. At the hospital, doctors swarmed around me, asking questions I could barely answer through the pain. The contractions were 3 minutes apart, then 2, then 1. Someone called for the attending physician, Dr. Robert Matthews, according to his badge, an older man with kind eyes and steady hands. The baby is coming. Dr. Matthews said, "We cannot stop it this time. We need to proceed with delivery. I want my mother." I said, "I want my lawyer. I want someone who cares about me in this room." Dr. Matthews looked at the guard. The guard looked at his supervisor. The supervisor made a phone call. Diana arrived 20 minutes later. Grant right behind her. By then I was fully dilated. The baby was crowning. The pain was beyond anything I had ever experienced. But Diana was there, holding my hand, telling me I was strong, telling me I could do this, telling me everything would be okay. At 11:47 on the night of January 5th, my daughter was born. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect despite her early arrival. Screaming her entry into the world with lungs that worked just fine. They put her on my chest. That first moment of skin against skin. Those tiny fingers wrapping around mine. Those eyes, unfocused but searching, finding my face. "Hi," I whispered through tears. "Hi, baby girl. I am your mama." She stopped crying, looked at me with an intensity that seemed impossible for a newborn, like she already knew everything we had been through, like she already understood that we had fought together and survived. I named her Hope, because that was what she was. The only hope I had left in a world that had taken everything else. Then the guard stepped forward. "Mrs. Weston," he said, "I have orders to transport you back to custody as soon as you are medically cleared." Diana's face went white. She just gave birth. She needs to be with her baby. The guard looked uncomfortable. "Those are my orders. And the baby." I asked, "What happens to Hope?" The guard could not meet my eyes. "Child Protective Services will take temporary custody pending investigation." "No," the word ripped out of me. Primal. Desperate. "You are not taking my baby. She just got here. She needs her mother." Matthews intervened. "The baby needs to remain in the NICU for observation. She is premature. She requires medical attention. Then I will stay with her. I am not leaving my daughter." The guard shifted his weight. "That is not possible. You are in police custody." Then put a guard into the room. Put 10 guards. I do not care. But I am not leaving my baby. It was not my decision. It was not anyone's decision except the system that had already decided I was guilty. Within 2 hours, I was back in a cell, and Hope was in the NICU with a CPS worker assigned to monitor her. I was a mother, and I could not even hold my child. I spent 4 days in that cell, 4 days of being interrogated, 4 days of Marcus's lawyers piling on charges, 4 days of watching news coverage through the common room television that painted me as a monster. Tech CEO reveals shocking details of wife's mental decline. Sources say baby may be in danger with unstable mother. Fraud investigation expands as questions mount about wife's involvement. On the 5th day, I had a visitor. The guard led me to a private conference room. I expected Grant, expected Diana. Instead, I found Evelyn Weston, Marcus's mother. She was 70 years old, elegant, wealthy, the kind of woman who had never worked a day in her life but somehow made everyone around her feel inadequate. I had met her perhaps 10 times during my marriage. She had never liked me, never thought I was good enough for her son. So what was she doing here? "Sit down, Claire," Evelyn said. Her voice was not warm, but it was not hostile either. "We need to talk." I sat, kept my hands visible on the table, wondered if this was another trap. "I want to show you something," Evelyn said. She pulled out a folder. Inside were photographs, old photographs, a young woman in a hospital gown, bruises on her arms, a black eye poorly concealed with makeup. "That is me," Evelyn said, 38 years ago. After Marcus's father broke my jaw for the third time, I looked at the photographs, then at Evelyn, then back at the photographs. I do not understand. My husband was a monster. Evelyn said. Her voice was flat, controlled, but underneath I could hear the tremor of old pain. Charming in public, cruel in private. He controlled everything, the money, the house, the children. He convinced everyone that I was unstable, hysterical, that anything I said was the ranting of a crazy woman. She met my eyes. Sound familiar? Marcus, I said slowly. You are talking about Marcus. I am talking about patterns. My husband learned how to destroy people from his father, and I spent 30 years covering it up, protecting my son from the truth about who his father was, what his father did. Why are you telling me this? Evelyn closed the folder. Because my granddaughter was born 5 days ago, and I have not been allowed to see her. Because my son is using the same playbook his father used. Because I am dying. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. Cancer. She continued. 6 months, maybe less. And I will not spend my last days watching Marcus become his father. I will not let my granddaughter grow up believing the lies he is telling about you. You believe me. I believe what I see, and I see a woman who gave up her career for my son, who built his company with him, who wanted nothing except to be a good wife and mother. And I see my son destroying her the same way his father destroyed me. But you have always supported Marcus. You have always taken his side, because I was afraid. Evelyn's voice cracked. Just a little, just enough to show the depth of her pain. I spent my whole life being afraid, and I am done. She reached into her purse, pulled out another folder, thicker this time, full of documents. This is everything. Evelyn said, the offshore accounts your husband does not know I know about. The real financial records he keeps in a safe deposit box. The original custody documents before Brooke forged your signature. And evidence that Nathan's death was not suicide. I stared at the folder, at Evelyn, at this impossible reversal. Why did you not give this to the police? Because the police in this town are in my son's pocket. His father taught him well. Build relationships. Create obligations. Make sure the system works for you, not against you. Then how do we use it? Evelyn smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a woman who had spent 40 years planning her revenge. We do not use it, Evelyn said. You do. You take this to federal authorities. You bypass every local official my son has bought. You burn his empire to the ground, and you raise your daughter in the ashes. She stood up, straightened her jacket, became once again the elegant, untouchable woman I had always known. One more thing, Evelyn said. The note Nathan left, the one that blamed you. Marcus dictated it to him, had his security chief hold a gun to Nathan's head while he wrote it. Then they made it look like suicide. How do you know this? Because Marcus told me, bragging, showing off what he had done, like his father used to do. She walked to the door, paused. Make him pay, Claire, for Nathan, for you. For the woman I used to be before his father broke me. Make him pay for all of it. Then she was gone. I sat in that conference room, staring at the folder full of evidence that changed everything. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of a jail. Doors clanging, voices echoing, lives continuing. But my life had just shifted again. From hopeless to possible. From victim to something else entirely. I opened the folder, started reading, and I began to plan. Grant got me released on bail 2 days later. The evidence Evelyn provided was enough to convince a federal judge that the charges against me were suspect, that the local investigation was compromised, that I deserved the chance to defend myself properly. More importantly, the SEC opened its own investigation into Weston Technologies. The FBI started looking into Nathan's death. The carefully constructed narrative Marcus had built began to crack. But I did not wait for the system to save me. I had learned that lesson already. Instead, I prepared my own press conference, not through lawyers, not through official channels, through a direct video posted to every social media platform I could access. I filmed it in Diana's living room. Simple backdrop. No makeup, no professional lighting, just me, looking directly at the camera, telling the truth. My name is Claire Weston. I said, 2 months ago, my husband locked me out of our home on Christmas Eve while I was 8 months pregnant. Since then, he has frozen my bank accounts, stolen my child, framed me for murder, and tried to convince the world that I am insane. I held up documents, showed receipts, named names. Marcus Weston has been committing financial fraud for over 5 years. He has hidden $50 million in offshore accounts. He had his business partner Nathan Cross murdered and made it look like suicide. And he has used his money and influence to corrupt every system designed to protect people like me. I looked directly at the camera, at everyone who was watching, but I am not asking for your sympathy. I am asking for your attention, because what happened to me happens to women every day. Powerful men destroy their partners, and the system helps them do it. Well, I am done being destroyed, and I am done being silent. The video went viral within hours. Millions of views, thousands of shares, comment sections exploding with women telling their own stories. Other victims of men like Marcus, other survivors who had been silenced by money and power. Marcus's PR team tried to respond, called me delusional, called the video a desperate act. But the tide had turned. People were listening now. People were believing. The FBI moved faster than anyone expected. They arrested Marcus at his own IPO celebration. Federal agents walked into the ballroom where he was accepting congratulations and put him in handcuffs in front of 300 investors. I was not there, but I watched the footage later. Watched the confusion on his face turn to fury. Watched him scan the crowd looking for someone to blame. His eyes found the camera, found me somehow, even through the screen. I saw the moment he understood, the moment he realized that the woman he had tried to destroy had destroyed him instead. Brooke was arrested at the airport that same night, caught trying to flee with $2 million in kickbacks and a one-way ticket to a country without extradition. She tried to cut a deal, offered to testify against Marcus in exchange for reduced charges. The prosecutors considered it. I hope they take it. Not because I feel sorry for her, but because every piece of evidence, every testimony, every confession builds the case that puts Marcus away forever. The murder charge came 3 weeks later. Marcus's security chief confessed, told investigators exactly how Nathan died, how Marcus had forced him to write that note, how they had staged the scene to look like suicide. Marcus denied everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The gun that killed Nathan matched one registered to Marcus. DNA evidence placed Marcus at the scene. Financial records showed payments to the security chief that could not be explained. Marcus Weston was convicted of first-degree murder, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, a dozen other charges that added up to 3 consecutive life sentences. I was in the courtroom when Judge Patricia Winters read the verdict. I watched Marcus's face drain of color, watched him look around desperately for someone to save him, watched him finally understand that no amount of money or power could protect him from the consequences of his actions. The judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I stood up, walked to the podium, faced the man who had tried to erase me from existence. You thought you could destroy me. I said, well, you planned it for years, isolated me, made me dependent on you. Waited until I was at my most vulnerable, and then tried to take everything. Marcus would not look at me, stared at the table in front of him. But you made a mistake. You underestimated me. You forgot that before I was your wife, I was a lawyer. Before I was your victim, I was a fighter. Before you tried to take my daughter, I was a mother. I let the words sink in. I hope you think about that every day of your life sentence. I hope you remember that you lost to the woman you tried to destroy. And I hope you never, ever forget my name. I walked out of that courtroom into bright sunshine. Diana was waiting on the steps with hope in her arms. Grant stood beside them, smiling for the first time since I had met him. It is over, Diana said. You won. I took hope from her arms, held my daughter close, breathed in that baby smell that I would never get tired of. No, I said, it is just beginning. 1 year later, the apartment is small, nothing like the mansion, but it is mine. Really mine, paid for with the settlement money that came after the company collapsed. Hope is learning to walk now, 14 months old and determined to conquer the world. She takes wobbly steps across the living room, falls, gets up, tries again, just like her mother. I started a new law practice 6 months ago. Small firm, just me and 2 associates. We specialize in representing women in divorce cases, women whose husbands have more money, more power, more resources, women who are told they cannot win. We win a lot. Diana comes over every Sunday for dinner. She has become the grandmother I always wished Hope would have, spoiling her rotten, reading her stories, teaching her to be strong. I am dating someone new. James, a public defender I met at a courthouse. He has kind eyes and a gentle voice, and he treats me like an equal, like a partner. We are taking it slow. Trust does not come easy anymore, but it comes. Some nights I still wake up in a panic, still check my bank accounts compulsively, still flinch when someone locks a door behind me. The scars do not disappear just because the monster is in prison. But every morning I wake up in my own apartment, hold my own daughter, build my own life. And I remember what I learned standing in the snow on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. Locked doors are not endings. They are invitations to build something better. Last week I got a letter from prison, not from Marcus, from Brooke. Inside were photographs I had never seen. Marcus with 3 other women during our marriage, documents showing another family, a child in another state. Brooke's note was short. I was not the first, but I am making sure there is never another. I do not know why she sent it. Guilt, maybe, or revenge against the man who abandoned her when she needed him most. It does not matter. What matters is that Hope woke up this morning and smiled at me, that the sun came through the window of our small apartment, that I have work to do and people to help in a life that is entirely my own. What matters is that I survived, that I fought, that I won. Not the way I expected, not with mansions and millions, but with something better, with truth, with dignity, with myself intact. Hope takes another wobbly step, falls, looks at me with her father's eyes, but her grandmother's determination. Get up, baby girl, I say. Try again. She does. She always does. And so do I.